This is not audible. Pratt Audio Productions presents Parker Reads a Thing. U.S. Air Power by Bill Yene. Read to you by Parker Snyder. The Northrop F-5 series was never intended to serve with the American forces. The F-5s that now do serve with the U.S. Navy and Air Force pretend that they are the enemy. The original idea behind the F-5 back in the late 1950s was to develop the cheapest possible supersonic fighter, a jet fighter that the U.S. government could buy at a low cost and transfer to allied nations under the Military Assistance Program. Today, however, the F-5 also serves with the Navy's and Air Force's aggressor squadrons. Northrop's Model N-156 was selected for the MAP contract and given the nickname Freedom Fighter. Northrop based the N-156 on their T-38 supersonic trainer program, and the two aircraft therefore look strikingly similar in appearance. The first N-156 prototype was ready in 1957, but intragovernmental disagreement over the parameters of the program kept the Freedom Fighter, officially designated the F-5, out of production for 4 years. By September 1964, a number of F-5s were at Williams Air Force Base, Arizona, where pilots from many nations were anxious to make it their own. Iran and South Korea were first, followed by the Philippines and Taiwan. The Freedom Fighter's baptism of fire came in 1965. American pilots took them into combat in Vietnam prior to turning them over to the South Vietnamese Air Force. Pakistan and Libya received F-5s under the MAP, as did such NATO countries as Norway, the Netherlands, Greece, and Turkey. In terms of cost, the Freedom Fighter concept was a success because the F-5 sold for less than one-third the price of the contemporary F-4 Phantom II. Neutral Switzerland bought the F-5, making it the only jet fighter that country ever purchased from the United States. Switzerland was among just a handful of nations to actually buy the F-5. North of the border, Canadair obtained a license to build them under the CF-5 designation for the Canadian Air Force. Canadair eventually sold some Canadian-built CF-5s to the Netherlands as NF-5s. The name Tiger evolved from the Far East, where the F-5s were known as the Scotia Tiger, or Little Tiger, because of their size and tenacity. In fact, Scotia Tiger had been the code name for the deployment of the F-5s to Vietnam. Name Tiger became an official appellation of the airplane itself only after the F-5E and dual-control F-5F were introduced in 1973 and called it the Tiger II. More than 1,200 F-5As and dual-control F-5Bs were built, and more than 1,400 F-5Es and F-5F Tiger IIs were built through 1987. In 1980, Northrop began developing even more advanced F-5, which had increased weapons capability, all-new avionics, and the most advanced radar system in the world. Although similar to the Tiger II, except for a redesigned nose and tailplane, the new aircraft was vastly more capable. Originally designated the F-5G, the new plane, already named Tiger Shark, proved to be so much of an advancement over the Tiger II that it was redesignated the F-20. The Tiger Shark has the fastest scramble time from the moment the alarm sounds to the gears in the wells in the world. The Tiger Shark's story is one of the most unusual in aviation history. Northrop spent $1.2 billion developing what was one of the most advanced aircraft in the world, then built 3 examples, logged 1,534 demonstration flights all over the world between 1982 and 1986, but failed to sell a single airplane to anybody, anywhere. With such a low-cost, high-performance fighter, Northrop should have had customers banging their door down to buy them. But this never happened. Many of the old F-5 customers showed interest, but no one crossed the line. The United States Air Force even strongly considered the F-20 for its new lightweight air defense fighter. November 1986, when the Air Force chose the F-16 over the F-20, the handwriting was on the wall, and Northrop decided to cut its losses and mothball the entire program. The Air Force has always been a rather poor customer of the F-5s in general. They bought a majority of the original F-5s, but mostly for the exports. There were no operational F-5 units in the Air Force until 1975, when that service found itself with over 100 F-5s that couldn't be delivered to the South Vietnamese Air Force because South Vietnam had ceased to exist. It was about this same time that both the Navy and the Air Force came up with the idea of dissimilar air-to-air combat training. Most fighter pilots had engaged in mock aerial combat with familiar aircraft, usually with aircraft like those that the pilots themselves were flying. However, in actual combat, the fighter pilots would almost invariably encounter dissimilar aircraft whose pilots used unfamiliar tactics. Since there were no F-5 squadrons, the F-5s were unfamiliar. The idea evolved one step further to the creation of the aggressor squadrons, in which Navy and Air Force pilots would be equipped with F-5s and spend their time learning and practicing, principally Soviet fighter tactics. And fighter pilots from throughout the services would then come to fly mock air battles against the aggressors and to gain the tactical experience flying against the same kind of tactics that they might encounter in a real combat situation. The Air Force calls these exercises Red Flag, and the Navy calls its variation Top Gun. In live weapon exercises and potentially in wartime, the Tiger II packs a pair of cannons, each backed by 280 rounds of 20mm ammo. Wingtip racks like those of the later F-16 and F-A-18 are capable of carrying a 9-sidewinder air-to-air missiles. Underwing pylons can heft an impressive 3.5 tons of bombs, and electronic countermeasure pods, and even an AGM-65 Maverick missile. In flying aggressor missions, F-5s are armed with lasers and electronic sensors, which are used to designate the killers and the dead in the supersonic laser tag team matches that characterize exercises such as Red Flag. It's here the F-5 shines, a diminutive bandit scurrying across the sights of larger and more expensive foes. The Northrop F-5E Tiger II has a wingspan of 26 feet 8 inches, a length of 47 feet 3 3/4 inches, a height of 13 feet 4 1/4 inches. It's powered by two General Electric J85 GE21 turbojets, producing 5,000 pounds of thrust. The top speed comes in at Mach 1.64 with a cruising speed of Mach 0.8. Operational altitude is 51,800 feet, and its maximum range, an impressive 1,543 miles. The Northrop F-5E Tiger II.